20,000 years ago, winter wasn't a season, it was an executioner. Picture Europe during the last glacial maximum. Glaciers a mile thick, covering half the continent. Temperatures that could drop to -40 for months at a time. No supermarkets, no thermostats, no down jackets shipped overnight. Just you, fire you had to keep alive with your own hands, and a body that evolved for the African savanna, not for snow. So how did anyone survive this? The answer is stranger and smarter than you'd expect. Let's start with the most obvious problem. Human skin is almost naked. We lost most of our body hair over 1 million years ago, back when we needed to sweat and cool down while chasing prey across hot grasslands. That adaptation was brilliant in Africa. It was a death sentence in an ice age.
So humans had to invent what evolution forgot to give them: clothing. Here's where it gets interesting. Scientists actually figured out when humans started wearing clothes by studying lice. Not fossils, lice. Body lice can only survive in clothing, not on bare skin. In 2010, researchers compared the DNA of human body lice to head lice and calculated when the two species split apart genetically. The answer came out to roughly 170,000 years ago. That's when clothing was invented. Long before agriculture, before cities, before writing, someone figured out how to turn animal hide into a second skin. And this wasn't a blanket thrown over your shoulders. At a site called Sunghir in Russia, archaeologists found a burial from 34,000 years ago. 2 children laid to rest wearing thousands of ivory beads, each one carefully sewn in rows that traced the outline of tailored clothing. Not draped fabric, fitted garments, trousers, hooded jackets, boots. Someone had invented the needle, and with it, they had invented winter survival. But clothing alone wasn't enough. You needed shelter. And in the coldest parts of Ice Age Europe, there weren't always caves nearby, and there definitely weren't always trees. So what did people build shelters out of when there was no wood? Bones. Mammoth bones. At a site called Mizirich in Ukraine, archaeologists uncovered the remains of dwellings built almost entirely from mammoth skeletons. Skulls stacked to form walls, tusks curved into door frames, leg bones used as support beams. One structure used the remains of at least 149 mammoths. Not hunted all at once, but scavenged and collected over generations. Because bone doesn't rot the way wood does. And in a landscape with no forests, it was the only building material available. People lived inside the skeletons of the largest land animals that ever walked the earth, and it kept them alive. Now think about the fire inside that shelter. It wasn't just for warmth. It was survival math. Every single person in that group depended on somebody keeping that flame alive through the night, through the storm, through the weeks when nobody could leave to gather more fuel. There was no backup generator. If the fire died in the depths of winter, people died with it. This is why groups didn't scatter during the cold months. This is why winter forced humans into something they weren't always naturally inclined to do: depend completely on each other. Here's the part modern people rarely think about. Winter didn't just test your body, it tested the group. Anthropologists studying seasonal hunter-gatherer patterns have found that in warm months, when food was everywhere, groups would split into small family units and scatter across the land. But when winter came, those same groups merged back together into large camps. Dozens of people crowded into one space, sharing one set of fires, one stockpile of food. Winter forced cooperation. It punished anyone who tried to go it alone. And this is where the body itself comes in. Human beings, it turns out, aren't just naked apes who got lucky with fire and fur. Our bodies carry an ancient cold defense system most people have never heard of: brown fat. Unlike the fat that stores energy, brown fat exists purely to burn calories and generate heat, almost like an internal furnace. Babies are born with plenty of it because newborns can't shiver effectively. Populations that lived for generations in the coldest climates on Earth, in Siberia, in the Arctic, kept higher levels of this fat into adulthood. Your ancestors weren't just wearing more layers. Some of them were biologically manufacturing their own heat. Food changed everything too. Summer was for gathering. Winter was for eating what you'd already prepared. Long before refrigerators, humans figured out preservation through instinct and necessity. Meat was dried into strips that wouldn't spoil. Fat was rendered and mixed with dried meat and berries into a dense, calorie-loaded paste that could last for months without rotting. Something startlingly similar to what later cultures called pemmican. Fish were smoked over fire until the moisture was gone and the flesh could survive a season buried in snow. None of this was written down. None of this was taught
taught in a classroom. It was passed from hand to hand, mouth to mouth, one frozen winter at a time, because the groups who didn't figure it out simply didn't make it to spring. And when the food ran low anyway, when the winter stretched longer than anyone had planned for, something else kicked in. Fasting metabolism. The human body, when deprived of food for extended periods, doesn't just slowly shut down, it shifts.
It starts breaking down fat stores for energy, preserving muscle and brain function far longer than most animals can manage. This is part of why humans could survive weeks of scarcity that would kill smaller mammals outright. Our ancestors weren't just tough. They were built, quite literally, with a backup fuel system for exactly this kind of emergency. So picture a full winter night in an Ice Age camp. Bodies pressed together under mammoth bone roofs. A fire tended in shifts because someone always had to stay awake to feed it. Dried meat and rendered fat rationed carefully because nobody knew exactly how long the cold would last. Outside, a landscape empty and silent under snow, hiding wolves and cave lions that were just as desperate as the humans were. Inside, survival wasn't a solo achievement. It was stitched together. Literally, needle by needle, bone by bone, favor by favor, until spring finally broke the ice. Now think about your own winter. You complain when your commute is cold for 10 minutes. You adjust a thermostat without standing up. Your food never spoils because a machine in your kitchen keeps it below zero all year round. You've never once had to wonder if the fire will make it through the night, because there is no fire. There's a switch, and it never runs out. We solved winter so completely that we forgot it was ever a war. Somewhere behind every heated room and every sealed bag of frozen food is 170,000 years of people who had nothing but bone, hide, and each other, and somehow figured out how not to die. You inherited their solution without inheriting their fear. And maybe that's the real cost of comfort. Not that we got soft, but that we forgot there was ever anything to be afraid of at all.